Welcome back, everyone. Listen, if you're gearing up for exams, or maybe you just need to lock down the absolute basics of research methodology, you are in exactly the right place. Consider me your personal study buddy for this explainer. We're going to tackle a massive topic today, one that literally always pops up on tests and is absolutely crucial for real-world research. We're talking about gathering primary data. By the end of this, we're going to build a rock-solid cheat sheet together, covering everything you need to know about the tools researchers actually use to pull information straight from the source.
So here is our game plan. We're breaking this study guide down into 4 key sections. First, we'll look at the questionnaire method. Second, the schedule method. Third, personal interviewing. And finally, number 4, we're going to put them all in a side-by-side method comparison.
Okay, let's just dive right into this, starting with Section 1, the questionnaire method. I want you to think of this method as your first digital flashcard. Basically, a questionnaire is just a list of questions about a specific inquiry that gets mailed out to your informants. But here's the absolutely crucial takeaway you need to remember: independence. The respondents get the form, they read it, and they independently write down their answers in the space provided. There's literally nobody hovering over their shoulder, rushing them, or explaining what the words mean. They're totally on their own.
Now you might be wondering, why do researchers love this method so much? Well, looking at the pros here, the biggest one is that it's highly economical. I mean, you're just paying for postage. Because it's so cheap, it's perfect for massive, widespread samples, and it easily reaches people in super remote places. And here is a huge point to star for your exams. Because the respondents fill it out entirely on their own time, the data is completely free from interviewer bias. Nobody's accidentally influencing their answers. Plus, they actually get the time to sit back, think, and give a proper answer without feeling put on the spot.
But, of course, there's always a catch, right? The major trade-off for being so incredibly cheap is that you are completely at the mercy of the respondent. The most glaring limitation: a notoriously low rate of return. People get it, toss it in the junk pile, and forget about it. That makes non-response bias super hard to figure out. Also, it strictly requires educated and cooperative respondents. If they can't read the language, they obviously can't fill it out. It also lacks any flexibility. You cannot change a question once it's mailed. And honestly, because you're just sitting around waiting for the mailman, it's usually the absolute slowest method of data collection out there.
So, what happens if we're running a study where we desperately need to avoid those exact limitations? Let's move on to Section 2, the schedule method.
Before we even define it, take a mental note of this comparison, because this is the exact trap you'll get tested on. Who physically fills out the form? In a questionnaire, it's the informant. They read and write independently. But in a schedule, it's the enumerator, that is a specially appointed person who verbally asks the questions and physically writes down the answers for them.
So, the formal definition of the schedule method: it's a pro forma, just the fancy word for a structured form, filled in by specially appointed enumerators. These folks personally visit the respondents, ask the questions in the exact order they are listed, and record the replies themselves. This brilliantly brings a human element into the mix. They can actually explain why they are doing the survey and clarify any confusing terms right on the spot. It's exactly why massive government agencies use this for huge projects, like a national population census. What's really cool about the schedule method is how it perfectly neutralizes the questionnaires' weaknesses. Having an enumerator there means you completely bypass the illiteracy problem. It works perfectly even if the informant can't read a single word. On top of that, the problem of non-response is pretty much avoided because, well, someone is physically knocking on their door asking the questions. It produces highly reliable results for really extensive inquiries, and you know for an absolute fact exactly who is answering the questions. But here comes the bill. Getting those high response reads comes with massive expenses and new limitations. First off, it is incredibly expensive. You have to hire, train, and send out a literal army of enumerators. Second, the accuracy of your whole data set now heavily depends on the interviewing skills of your staff. A bad interviewer will collect bad data. It's that simple. And finally, just the physical presence of a stranger standing there with a clipboard might make people hesitant to be fully honest, especially about sensitive or deeply personal topics.
Okay, let's pivot to Section 3, which introduces the most intensive tool in our kit: personal interviewing.
Personal interviewing is an intensive method where the investigator personally meets the informants face-to-face to ask questions directly. Because the investigator is sitting right there, they can clear up any doubts immediately. Actually, make sure you note this down. This method is usually kept to specific, smaller, local areas. It can be super formal with a strict, standardized set of questions, or it can be totally informal and flexible if you're just doing explorative research in a brand new field. The merits here are a qualitative researcher's dream. You get incredibly encouraging response rates because, let's face it, it's much harder to ignore a human being talking to you than it is to throw away a piece of mail. Accuracy is through the roof thanks to that immediate back-and-forth clarification. But here is the real secret weapon. It allows you to collect supplementary observational data. The investigator isn't just writing down words, they are actively observing the informant's environment and personal characteristics, which is absolute gold when you're trying to interpret the results later.
However, I gotta warn you about the severe pitfalls here, especially for your exams. The biggest red flag is the high vulnerability to investigator bias. The interviewer's own subjective views can easily creep in, sometimes totally unconsciously, and completely skew the data. Also, sitting down face-to-face with every single person is prohibitively expensive and incredibly time-consuming. Because of that, there's just no way you can use this for large-scale surveys, where you need to reach thousands of people across a huge geographic area.
All right, we've nailed down the core definitions and the pros and cons. Let's move to Section 4, the side-by-side method comparison. This is where we synthesize everything into that ultimate pre-exam cheat sheet I promised you.
Okay, so the whole point of learning this is knowing when to use which tool. Let's walk through this matrix. If you have basically zero budget, but you need to reach a vast, remote area, you go with a questionnaire. It's highly economical, but the trade-off is that your respondents absolutely must be educated, and you're running a major risk of non-response bias. Now, what if you have millions to spend and need guaranteed extensive reach, like a census? You use the schedule method. It's highly expensive, sure, but literacy isn't a problem, though you do have to worry about the skill of your interviewers. Finally, if you need deep, complex, qualitative data in a small local area, personal interview. Massively expensive, no literacy required, but you face the absolute highest risk of investigator bias. Seeing them side by side like this makes it so much easier to see why a researcher chooses one over the other in the real world.
Which brings us to a kind of provocative final thought to cap off our study session today. If every single method we just talked about is inherently limited, whether by crazy high costs, non-response from the public, or investigator bias, how do we ever actually collect perfect data? Well, the spoiler is we kind of don't. We simply pick the right, albeit flawed, tool for the specific job and carefully balance those trade-offs to get as close to the truth as humanly possible. It's like a giant puzzle, and it really highlights the beautiful imperfections of statistical research. I hope this cheat sheet helps you absolutely crush your exams. Keep studying, keep asking those great questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.